Greetings, YouTube. I was listening to some talking head on NPR recently, and he was espousing through more conventionally scientific terms the same kind of bullshit that RFK Jr. is. That there is an external source for the rise in autism. There isn't. It's genetics. I have been officially diagnosed as an autistic, which probably puts me on a watch list now, and I may find myself behind some kind of a barbed wire fence someday. But I am willing to stake my life, literally stake my life on the fact that my father was autistic and his father was autistic. And they weren't plagued by forever chemicals, which is one of the things that they are attributing to the rise in autism. No, there is no rise in autism. There is a rise in our diagnostics of autism. And I am baffled why anyone, any adult, can't grasp this, but particularly why someone who is from a medical field, who is in theory trained in the understanding of the scientific method. So I want you to go back to the first era when the microscopes were just being invented. For the longest time, the only way we could look at the world was with our eyes, which really limited our capacity to see things on a microscopic level. You can't really see things on a microscopic level. But then along came someone that invented something simple. A magnifying glass. Okay, this is just one I keep here, which I think needs batteries. Yeah, it needs batteries. And this right here was a marvel when it came to the seeing things in the world. Because suddenly, you could do things you couldn't do before. You could see details in a simple object that was not possible without this device. And that began the process of grinding lenses. Now remember, grinding lenses was done by hand, but also, this has always been, I've always found this delightful. People ground lenses as a hobby, which just makes me smile. I can think of very few nerdier things, and it makes me wonder if all the few people that really enjoyed grinding lenses as a hobby were themselves on the spectrum. But when you first had a microscope that had 10 power, you could see parts of the world that didn't exist. Now, those parts of the world didn't come into being when you made that lens. Those parts had always been there. And then when they got to 20 and 50 and 100 power, suddenly everything just ballooned. And now we have the ability with electron microscopes to see actual molecular structures, which is a beautiful thing. You can look at an insect under an electron microscope, and it looks like a kaiju. You can see details in it that just marvel. It's just a wonder. Now, those details didn't come into being when they flicked the switch on that electron microscope. They had always been there. It is just that now we have the ability to perceive them. That's what's going on with autism. Our diagnostic criteria have become more efficient. We've come to understand that there are certain traits and characteristics that help us understand what a person lives with on the the autistic spectrum. I found things out about myself with that diagnosis. I began to listen to other people on the spectrum, and I began to realize that, holy crap, these behaviors, which I had always perceived as being mine, as being indicative of the fact that I was broken because I couldn't understand the world, aren't broken traits. And they aren't just my broken traits. Yes, my particular framework of autism is different than anybody else's. But I have similar enough characteristics that other people notice them. Surprise, surprise, one of the people that noticed this is a good friend of mine who's autistic. There's a joke that whenever you tell someone who is allistic that you have been diagnosed, they're always like, oh, I would never guessed that you're autistic. Whereas when you reveal to your autistic friends that you have been diagnosed as autistic, their response is always like, yeah, we knew. But for some reason, we have put people into positions of authority and of disseminating information that don't grasp this, that don't understand that a 10-power microscope is not going to show you as much of the world as a 1,000-power microscope. Why is this so hard? That better diagnostic tools give you better results. Maybe I should understand why RFK Jr. doesn't get it. He's got a worm in his brain. But medical professionals should get it. And all I can think of is they're coming from such a conservative perspective that to accept that undermines so many of their own belief systems that they can't accept it. So I think that there may be a psychological and emotional blockage preventing some people from accepting the fact that, yes, I am presenting you with evidence. And if you are a true proponent of the scientific method, and you should accept that when it's shown to you repeatedly that that evidence is real, and the diagnostic tools that arrived at that evidence is real. And if a person who purports to be a supporter of the scientific method doesn't do that, then they're no longer a proponent of the scientific method. They've gotten to a point in their lives where they've ossified their thinking. And you'd think that a brainworm could explain it. But I don't think every scientist out there who has a conservative view of the world has a brainworm. It just saddens me when I see someone who would probably at one time had the ability to perceive the world through that open lens. And now they've shattered it.